Hi everyone, I've recently returned from the Mashatu Game Reserve in Botswana, and more specifically the new Limpopo photographic hide. In this video, I'll share my experience with you and also talk about camera gear that I used, as well as go through some images that I took and talk about camera settings and techniques that I used to capture some of those photographs. Now, I was invited by C4 Photo Safaris and Photo Mashatu to attend the launch of the new hide, and this video today is not sponsored by them. I'm making this video out of my own to share the experience with you all because I feel like there's a lot of value in this new photographic hide and the design is simply world class. So the hide is a sleep out hide, very different to a lot of other photographic hides. You can spend the whole night photographing wildlife. And for me, this is an absolutely incredible experience. Now, inside the hide, you have a full kitchen, a full bathroom. You've got beds very close to where you shoot, so you can get some rests if you want to. I spent the whole night photographing, and one of my favorite attractions of this hide is the open air to the wildlife. There's no glass in front of you, so you really do absorb the atmosphere of the bush. You can hear all the animals at night. We heard lions, leopard, hyena, jackal. It was an incredible experience, and also being so close to the wildlife, drinking from the waterhole right in front of the hide, it really gives you a sensory overload, listening to elephants drinking a mere 3 or 4 meters away from you. Now, the perspective that you get from this hide, you are at eye level with the water. You are then also about 5 meters or 6 meters from the drinking edge of the water in front of you, but then also the animals can drink around the waterhole. So you've really got a lot of opportunity to photograph different angles. And I'll speak about the lighting shortly at night, but the sessions in the hide last from the afternoon all the way through the night until the next morning. So the opportunity for wildlife photography is superb. My gear that I used a Nikon Z8 with a 180 to 600. I also had a 24 to 120 wide angle lens. Now, I would highly recommend, if you are visiting this hide or shooting in very low light conditions with artificial lighting, you need to have fast glass. The 180 to 600 it did pretty well with the high ISO capabilities of the Z8. But obviously, I would love something that has an aperture of 2.8 or faster if you want to get something wide that is super fast. 2 bodies is definitely essential. So I would recommend a long lens like this, a 400 2.8, or a nice zoom lens like this, a 180 to 600, because that zoom range definitely does give you a lot of different opportunities to photograph the wildlife. And then on the wide side, I would definitely recommend something like a 24 to 70 2.8, or a 24 to 120 f4, because you get the herd of elephants drinking in front of you and you really want to capture the entire herd. You don't want to always just isolate something. The wide angle gives you such a nice perspective. But let's jump onto the computer now. I'll show you what photographs I took, as well as talk about the camera settings and the techniques that I used. Okay, so I've got the images opened up into Lightroom. You can see these are some of the images I captured. The last 2 images were captured on a game drive after the hide session. So I'll talk about those in a bit. But let's have a look at this jackal here. I captured this at 600 millimeters. I did crop in a little bit, but as you can see, a 600 millimeter will give you such a nice perspective on a smaller carnivore like this. So if you have a big male lion drinking there, I think 600 millimeters will probably be a bit too long. Now, this was captured in the afternoon. Very basic. The lighting is not very challenging here, but you get a nice idea of the perspective that you shoot from. So one of the great features of the hide is multiple lighting angles coming from the back, the side, and the front. So you actually have the opportunity to change your angles. Now, at the back of the waterhole is actually a nice lighting setup that illuminated this warthog very nicely. So you can see the reflection in the water and also the nice bottom lighting, if you want to call it that, on this warthog. The ISO here was very high, 25,600 at f6.3, 1/200th of a second. So you can see a nice fast aperture here would have been nice, just to drop that ISO a little bit there. Here are some elephants drinking, ISO 6400, 1/100th of a second at f4. Here I used the 24 to 120 lens, just to get some more of the foreground, the water here, showing the nice reflection of the elephants drinking. And this, we used a light from the left-hand side to illuminate the animals there. Again, here's another nicely zoomed in shot. This is at 120 millimeters of this young elephant drinking. And you can see the dynamic lighting that we used here to really sidelight the animals, giving a nice perspective and also throwing a lot of the other elephants into shadow, really highlighting this young elephant here. So again, here's another one a little bit wider, 68 millimeters. I like the light on this elephant's face. I wish I'd zoomed in with a longer lens on that face there. But here you can see another example of the nice angle of light that you get. ISO 6400, f4 1/125 second exposure there. So I think the main thing here to know is you're going to be shooting at high ISOs. Your shutter speeds are going to be a lot slower to gather all that light in. So having a faster aperture will really help gather all of that light to help you drop your ISO a little bit, but also to increase your shutter speed. Now, when animals are static like this steenbok here, 125th of a second is fine because the animal's not really moving. But if the animal was walking, I would then have to raise my shutter speed up a bit faster, maybe to 1/250th of a second. And then also the ISO speed will also then have to increase to compensate for that. You can see in this image, the backlighting was really good, and I exposed for these highlights on the side of the animal and then threw everything else into blackness. But I feel like the contrast between that very sort of back side lit area of the animal really creates a nice dramatic photograph. The same steenbok changed its angle slightly, and you can see the perspective. I'm right here on the ground. I got as low as I could, ISO 10,000, 1/125 second exposure, f6. Here's a more zoomed in image, 330 mils on the Nikon 180-600. I wanted to really isolate some parts of these elephants, especially these young ones, and it was really nice. This tusk actually cast a shadow onto this young elephant here, which creates a bit of a compositional element there. The light from the right-hand side we set to be a little bit softer, so you can see the light on the right-hand side of this elephant is a bit softer, and the light on the left is a lot stronger. So you can change the lighting intensities, which is really nice. You can really play with different ideas on the lighting. So the sun rose, we had some cory bustards come in. Here's a shot, just a nice portrait, 600 millimeters. They did come quite close to the hide, and this hyena came to drink just as the sun was rising. This is at 520 millimeters. I don't think I cropped this image at all. Very slightly, just rotated the crop there. So you can see if you have a nice zoom lens, you're able to zoom in quite closely to these big predators when they come down to drink. And you can see the nice low angle perspective that the hide gives here. It's simply magnificent. Now, Mashatu is famous for leopards, and it did not disappoint. On this last game drive, we saw 4 different leopards within about 15 minutes. It was insane. But here, 2 leopards were mating, and that was a very good sighting. Spotlit, it was after dark. And then we found this little sparrowhawk during the rest of the morning drive on our last day. So as you can see, this photographic hide and Mashatu Game Reserve in general is simply superb. So check out this video next for more information on the new Limpopo hide. It's simply world class.